Hello, good afternoon, and welcome back to Danley Duncan on Preaching. So, some of you may have been asking or even thinking, I wonder what preachers have influenced Pastor Duncan. And that's the question I'm going to answer without you asking it to me directly. What or who are the preachers who have influenced me in my preaching journey? It's a very important question because obviously all of us would have um, role models, men who have influenced us in some way or the other to be a preacher today. And so I have a brief list, all right, a brief list. Now, some, at least I could tell you one person on the list I don't really listen to anymore, but I'm just giving you my journey, right? And I was not always at this point where I could even talk about preaching. So, there were times when I would have listened to persons that would have helped me in some way, but today I probably would not um, listen to them. The first person on my list kind of falls within that category. This is Creflo Dollar. Creflo Dollar. Um, you might say, but how come he influenced you? He sure did, right? He influenced me when I was a young believer at the time when I got serious with God and I was working in a bank and so on. I used to put him on, whether through video, but I used to follow his teaching outline as well, and he encouraged me in a positive way to try to be clear I could see how an outline, a preaching slash teaching outline, how the layout he gave, and his layouts were pretty clear, right? Um, and so that helped me. That helped me to force myself to write out my outline, write out what the points that I want to make, and to be clear about that. And one time I even used to listen to his wife, Taffy Dollar. They used to be my favorite couple, right? In terms of ministry and so on. So that's where I would have started in terms of outside of my my pastor at the time. And I'm gonna give you another name outside of my pastor, and then I'm gonna talk about my pastor. And his name is Joe Fort. Joe Fort. He is a Calvary Baptist, Calvary Chapel preacher. I'm not sure if he's alive today. I think he is. I'm not sure if he's still preaching today. But his name is Joe Fort. And but he the way his style alone, I was pretty impressed with his style of delivery. His content was great, of course, because if you don't have any content, I really probably wouldn't listen to you. But his content was deep, but his style, the way he structured, the way he delivered, firstly, and the way he structured his sermons. So he wouldn't give main points. He would just, I'm not sure if he gave a topic. I think uh, he just preached the scriptures, right? Not so much a topic per se, but he will go verse by verse, and my, you will learn so much. You'll be encouraged, and his pastoral approach to preaching as well really helped, right? So Joe Fort, I even have some old sermons from him that I would have downloaded. Okay, I probably must go and find him to see if he's still around preaching. So that's Pastor Joe Fort. And then we come to my pastor, Pastor Alvin Walker. the man who influenced me greatly, tremendously, the pastor who really pastored me and whom I learned preaching from. His expressions, his style of delivery, um, the style, the breakdown of his sermons, right? The clarity in his points, that you were clear as to what his point was, to write it down. No time did you listen to pastor preaching and you weren't sure as to what he's saying. You always sure and clear as to what he's trying to communicate. All right. And so Pastor Walker has done a tremendous um, job in terms of influencing me in in preaching God's word. Right? He's the man I sat under for a number of years, listening to him, receiving from him. Matter of fact, it's through his preaching that the Lord has saved me, right? And so, Pastor Walker, I always say that's my pastor. Wherever I go, no matter how old I get, that's my pastor. Okay, and then we have Leonard Ravenhill, right? Leonard Ravenhill. He is one of those old time preacher, of course, fire hell, brimstone, kind of preacher. And you listen to him, boy. You listen to a preacher. You listen to a man who is speaking from a place, speaking for righteousness, speaking for holiness, right? And you listen to him. Sometimes you listen to preachers these days, and they all tied up with these denominational um, guardrails. So it's like it's almost as if they're afraid to say, not this guy, not Leonard Ravenel. He talks about prayer, he talks about holiness, and you will find his sermons on YouTube if you take a look. Then we have Charles Spurgeon, who's preaching, of course, written down for me, and I do enjoy reading Spurgeon. Long sermons, but you could sense um, the gravity, the weight of the moment that he's delivering, right? Not just words. You could sense that time was taken to pen these words and that he was ministering to his congregation. He wasn't just throwing out words all over the place that had no sense of direction. He was ministering to the people uh, that he was pastoring, right? So we have Charles Spurgeon, and often I would quote him in my sermons and so on. And then another uh, preacher who has influenced me is John MacArthur. He recently passed away last year or so, 2025, and his preaching has influenced me quite a bit. At first, I wasn't too, into him preaching and all that because his style of preaching is not a catchy one. But you sit down and you listen to one of his sermons, and you are hooked. You are pulled in because of the weight of truth that he's delivering and the breadth, the length and breadth of it. That he's somebody that I look at as, when it comes to preaching, he's one of the principals. He's not a student, he's a principal in terms of preaching. You listen to him and you will learn a whole lot, right? So John MacArthur, and I do still listen to John MacArthur. I put on his sermons. Most of these guys I still listen to, except number one, right? But I still listen to John MacArthur, and then of course Paul Washer. Mm, I I don't listen to him as much before, for no particular reason, right? Nothing against him, but I just haven't listened to him over the past couple months. I probably listened to him like once or so. But I love to hear him talk. I love to hear him talk about marriage, about men, about prayer, you know. He has this famous thing he normally say, there are no great men, just weak, puny men who depend on a great God, you know. And that is so true, right? So I do love listening to Paul Washer. Um, so sometimes I do listen to conferences where these guys would be ministering and so on, right? And then I also want to introduce you to this one. Um, so this person you may not know, right? His name is Richard Owen Roberts. Richard Owen Roberts, and you may not know who he is, but if you check, search for that name on YouTube, whatever comes up, listen to it. He is an old time preacher, as in an old preacher, old in age, right? And he's been preaching for over 50 something, probably 60 years now. And he's about 80 something, right? But you could tell he is preaching. You could tell when somebody is has that a connection with God and is not just preaching some truths, you know, but you're preaching with authority. You're preaching with a depth, with a passion, with an earnestness. Right? You could tell. You could tell. And he does. He does. Richard Owen Roberts. I found him uh, about 5 years ago. I came in contact with him, and he has, you know, he doesn't have a whole lot of sermons, right? But the ones that I do find on YouTube, you know, of great encouragement, right? With encouragement. And I'm gonna give two more, and then that'll be it. That'll make it 10, right? So two more. The next one is H.B. Charles Jr. He's a pastor, a Baptist pastor, and he's older than I am for sure, but he's been around a long time. Started pastoring when he was 17 years old, and what I like about him, I listen to his preaching, but I find what I have learned more from his teachings about preaching. I've learned a whole lot more, and I love to listen to guys who talk about preaching. Um, and he's one of them who teaches, right, preaching courses, and he has his own, not necessarily academy, but cutting it straight, right? And I normally would encourage persons to follow his stuff and receive from him. I put him there because of what personally I've received from him. His on preaching podcast I've been listening to for a while, and I used to listen put them on when I came from church, or even a Monday night, or whatever the case may be, and my wife would be there listening with me, and we would learn together. Right? It's on preaching podcast. But one of the reasons why I he's in the list, not because of him personally only, which is first and foremost. As I said, I learned from his podcast, his teachings, his different things, a number of things I learned from him. Um, but he is the one who introduced me to number 10, Stephen Lawson. We call him Steve Lawson. If you don't know who Steve Lawson is, that's okay, right? He's no longer preaching. If you know who he is, you know why he's no longer preaching. But if you know who he is, you know Steve Lawson, right? He is about the best preacher that I'll ever come across in my lifetime. And when I talk about preacher and preaching, he knows how to preach. Well, at least he did when he used to. I've learned. most of the things that I share on this channel, I've learned from him. He guided me to Spurgeon, to John MacArthur, to um, John Stott. Um, he guided me to these guys in terms of leading me to help me to learn more. But I've learned from him personally. I've been a part of his academy when he was operating. Um, Whenever his preaching comes on, I'm plugging it in. My wife even loved him. And that's why, it really hurt us when, what took place. It really hit us hard because we don't really, who preacher that you really sit down and listen to these days, right? Very few, very few. But Steve Lawson has been one of those preachers who he could preach. And you felt that preaching was taking place. You felt that, listen, this ain't a lecture, this ain't just, um, expository lecture. This is preaching, right? And I've learned so much from him. And even to today, I still use his material. And what, as I said, as I have this channel on preaching, he has been one of my biggest inspiration to to continue on this journey that I felt the Lord was leading me to. Okay, and so that's my 10. I try to make it 10. I think there's some more, but 10 preachers over the years, and I've been preaching since I was 18 years old. And so I've been preaching for more than a decade now. Um, Almost 2 decades I've been preaching um, Christian, and yeah, I've been preaching for 2 decades now, and so it's been a long time. But I've learned a lot along the way, and I pray that God will continue to teach me as well as I share with you. So, but what about you? Who can you type in the comments? Who are, I talk about just your favorite? Who has contributed to your preaching? Who has helped you in your preaching journey thus far? Whom the Lord has used to help you? Can you share in the comments? Share with me. As I've shared with you mine, you can share with me yours, those who have influenced you over the years. Okay, so looking forward to seeing that. And until then, this is Danley Duncan on preaching. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Until next time, take care.